Well, happy New Year. We have made it through 2020, and now this is the very first episode in 2021. I don't know about y'all, but I think there's just such a rejuvenation of this moment in time where, regardless, let's take away the pandemic for this analogy, but it's always nice to close out a year and embark on a new year. And I'm standing in that today, whereas we can be excited and stand in anticipation for what the future holds. Even though it still feels a little murky, and even though it still feels a little unsettled, I just think there's something about the timing of the old going away and ringing in the new. So, without further ado, let's talk about our guest today. Mitchelene BigMan is the first Native American that I have had on the podcast. And I'm so excited because I just love her heart for service and I love her strength and her dignity and her story. That just makes everything so incredible for the new year. So, some takeaways, y'all. Be proud of who you are. Live a life where you don't take for granted the freedoms we have. And here in America, we have so many freedoms that I do think on a daily basis we take for granted. And living a life that is full of freedom, don't waste it. Also, step boldly into your passions. She is so committed to her organization, Native Americans for Women Warriors, and she's just boldly living out her life. I just want you guys to also embrace that for yourselves. And then last but not least, healing looks different for everybody. And whereas Mitchelene uses her Jubilee dress and dances for healing as a part of honoring her nation and her culture, healing really comes in all facets. Guys, it looks different for each and every one of us. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't found the thing that helps you heal yet, I really just would encourage you to try something you haven't tried before, even if that means dancing through your pain. Welcome. I'm Carrie Jeter, and this is the Freedom Sisters Podcast, a show where my sisters in service talk about her life journey, from hardships to victories and everything in between. We are the leading media company to amplify women veterans. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another edition of the Freedom Sisters podcast. And today I am so thrilled to have a sister who I've known for 7 years. So it's a real honor to have you on the show today. And before we just jump in big, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, my name is Mitchelene BigMan. I'm a retired Sergeant First Class of the United States Army. I am a combat veteran of Iraqi freedom. I did serve 22 years, raised my hand April of 1987 and retired April of 2009. So it was quite a journey, fulfilling, very fulfilling.
And Mitch, maybe even by your last name, they'll recognize that you are a Native American woman, and you're my first Native American sister on the show. So that is also just truly incredible and such an honor, I think, to have that heritage. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. Yes. I think there were times, because the way history had portrayed us, for the longest, I was trying to face the ridicule of how natives were always portrayed, I guess you could say, in society. A lot of times I kind of kept to myself, and then the ridicule I had to face because of it. But I want to say, when I joined the military, it kind of made me look at it a little bit more different, to where I'm like, no, I'm very proud to be Native American, because there's a lot of history that Native Americans, especially Native American women, have also been part of. So I'm very proud to be Native American.
And do you identify as by tribe, or are you just blanket the statement that you're Native American, or what actual tribe are you a part of?
I'm actually, well, a lot of us indigenous say nations, we're of nations. I'm a Absalogan Nation, but it's actually the Crow tribe of Montana. So I was kind of given a quick a quick class in regards to natives. We look at ourselves as nations because we're sovereign. And then they said it was the white people, I guess, that gave us that title as tribes
As
or
tribes,
nations.
yeah.
So
Gotcha.
I was like, oh, okay. So they say a lot of times I'm corrected by my elders. You're a Saluga. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's beautiful. See, I didn't know that. I just learned something. So I love that. I think that respect should definitely be given. You were, in fact, a nation, as sovereign nations. And man, man, my goodness. Like sometimes it just like makes me so angry. Like when you go back and you read history or you watch the movies or whatever, and it's just like, how can one race, which is an interesting concept to me anyway, look at another person? Like you look like me, you might sound a little different, you might look a little different, but you have the same makeup, if you will. You know, the soul, you're standing on 2 feet, you're able to articulate, you have this emotion and this brain and all of these amazing skills that and dehumanize them. Like I've just never understood that. So growing up as a Native American, how you had kind of touched on it a moment ago about the betrayal and you were a little afraid to like step into your fullness as a Native American. Was it at the army when you joined the army that you decided like, hey, I'm embracing this because you stepped into a diversity world? Or when was that moment for you that you were like, this is good. I'm proud of my heritage?
I want to say yes, it was the military, because I guess I never paid much attention to my last name, BigMan, because we have like Big Man and Walks Over the Ice and Stands by the Water and, Pretty Eagle and Pretty Shield and stuff like that. So I was used to that. But when I joined the military and it being so diverse and people just loved my name, wow, that's a neat name. And I'm like, hey, yeah, it is a neat name, They said, and I've been asking, they said, well, where's it from? I said, it's native, it's indigenous, and then it seemed like I wasn't as scared anymore. I was really proud. And then I kind of like brought it forth more so in the military, and I made it more aware that, hey, Native Americans we're alive and strong. And I said, if you look back, especially World War II, if it wasn't for the natives, like I say, that's how we won that war. But a lot of people have a tendency we're kind of forgotten. Even just recently, when CNN was during the election, they named like the Hispanic American, the Asian American, and we were called something else, which was I thought by now, I think, especially here in America, they would kind of get it that, we're here. We weren't even given, we were put in a category as something else. So we found it very offensive. I know I did, especially as a combat veteran serving to keep this land safe and allowing these people to have these freedoms. And I know I don't stand alone on this and how people take these freedoms for granted.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a slap in the face. And I thought, just when I think we're making progress and then something like that happens and then it's over the media, it just kind of hurts.
Yeah, I could totally attest to that. Especially for us being women, there's like, you feel like you start to make headway and then it's like, what? We're like taken back a few years. And so I can't relate to it in the Native American context, but I sure can as a woman who served. Now, I'm glad you kind of talked about the success of World War II with the Native Americans in the war. Because yesterday, as we're recording this, it's the day after Veterans Day, and I watched this Unsung Heroes yesterday, which was all about women's successes and victories and history for the whole time we've served. But they did touch base on the natives and their success as well, in addition to the women's success for World War II. Could you maybe talk a bit more about code talkers is the correct term, right?
Yes.
And why that was such a needed thing, and if you don't mind, and are you related to anybody who served in World War II?
Well, my grandparents served in World War II. My grandmother, she was in the Women's Army Corps. She was a drill instructor at the time.
That's
and
awesome.
She served during World War II. Sometimes there were times I had to tell her she had the equivalency of a drill sergeant. She was only 5 feet tall, and she was very stern, and she was one of those. I guess they said that's where I get the characteristics of being outspoken. But she might have been 5 feet tall, but she let everybody know, don't let the size fool you.
Right. Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah. So, but the code talkers, what it was, I mean, even in World War I and other conflicts and combat operations, the native languages had been used, but the code talkers, the Navajos, actually took the language itself and made a code out of it, because a normal speaking Navajo would not understand what they were saying, because there was one Marine that was a POW that they were asking him, what are they saying? You know, and he couldn't decipher it because what they were saying was not making any sense to him. And he couldn't even, you know, because so many times, you know, any codes or anything like that were being used, they were always broken. Well, this was one code that couldn't be broken.
Nice.
Because not even amongst the Navajo Nation, because of the fact that they actually took that specific language and then changed it into a code that they used during World War II. And no one could break that code. No one could.
That's
so
awesome.
That's where, and it makes me very proud, because I have relatives that are Navajo as well and that have served. And it means that much more. I look at stuff like that makes me stand. I'm only maybe 5'3", but I feel like I'm 10 feet tall when I hear stuff like that, and how, you know, Native Americans had contributed so much into not only just history, but military history, and then where it was very successful.
Yeah, I think that's really, really amazing. Wow. This is so much more enriching than how I originally had thought this conversation was going to go. So I am just so grateful for you. Now, you have all this wealth of experience being in the Army. You served for 22 years. So I just want to talk a little bit about what you did. And if you don't mind sharing, you could pick a story that is your favorite or a fond memory, but what did you did? Where did you serve? And why you picked the Army? Let's just kind of talk about that.
Well, I've been asked that before. They said, what made you choose the Army? I said, well, originally I wanted to join the Marines. And I remember my junior year in high school, I'd taken the test and I was all set. As soon as I graduated from high school, I'm going to join the Marines. But my mom more or less talked me out of it. She didn't want me to join the service so soon because, you know, she was in fear of how, you know, what I was going to face as a young woman and a Native American. I guess any woman of color during any era, we just had those obstacles we got to overcome. And she was just kind of very sheltering. So I was like, okay, I won't go. And I got talked into attending the college that she attended. But the thing of it is, when I went there, I'm like, I didn't know what I was going to major in. I didn't know, because it I ended up shifting lanes so quickly and didn't know what I was doing. And the only thing I did in college was enjoy the college life and not so much my studies. So finally, I was at a point where when I lost my funding and my mom had moved back to the reservation, I was like, when I moved back with her, I was like, this is not me. Because most of my life was off the reservation. So, you know, little bit I lived on the reservation, but a lot of it was off the reservation. So when she moved back, I'm like, there's like no unemployment is like really high, 90% unemployment, 90%, you know, the poverty, that just something I was like, I cannot live in this type of lifestyle. I have to be something. So that's when I joined the Army. That when the Marines, I went back to the Marines and they said, I have to wait a year. I'm like, no, I got to leave like now. I've got to get out of my situation and take on something where once I get in, I can't just jump out of it. I have to stick it through. So when the recruiter said, well, if you want to leave now, join the Army. So I went right next door and I told the recruiter, I said, you don't have to buy me lunch. You don't have to buy me dinner. You don't even have to buy me a Coke. How soon can you get me out of here? And 3 days later, I raised my right hand and was preparing for the military.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I love how you're like, you don't have to buy me lunch, dinner, or even a Coke. I wonder how many people actually show up like, don't schmooze me, don't give me the fluff. I know I want to serve and send me away. What did you do? What was your MOS?
I was a diesel mechanic. And when I actually went to the MEP station, they said, okay, what is it you want to do? And well, they offered clerical and I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. And I said, well, what about infantry? He goes, you can't do infantry. I'm like, why can't I do infantry? He goes, because you're a woman. I was like, why can't a woman do infantry? So I'm one of those, I'm a rebel without a cause. So he goes, well, it's not open to women. So I was like, okay. I said, well, what about mechanics? Because my dad was a mechanic. He goes, yeah, you can be a diesel mechanic. I'm like, okay, I'll do diesel mechanic. Because I wanted something challenging for me. I didn't want to do the clerical. I've done secretarial work, nothing against it. Because I knew shorthand typing. I mean, I knew all of, filing, because I worked under Youth Power Program, and that's what I did. But I was like, no, I want something a little bit challenging. Didn't realize what I was getting myself into, but I'm like, okay, I'll take diesel mechanics. And went through the school, went through basic training, AIT, and then my first duty station was Germany. And they put me in an all-male battalion because of my last name, BigMan. They thought I was a guy. I was their first female in that combat engineers battalion.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I ended up on, it's an MS, we call it a contact team, because we go where they go, and we work on vehicles. We might be, all of a sudden a vehicle might just be stranded on the side, and we work on it until it's done. And then we keep on going. So wherever they went, we went. And even I served in artillery and supported infantry units. That was the closest I could get to infantry. But it was a challenge, because when I first got to my first duty station, and the fact that they found out who BigMan was, oh my God, the discontentment, the fact that, oh, great, now we got this female. Oh, she's a girl, we're going to have to help her with this. And it was, I could just feel the tension. They did not want me. They didn't want me on their contact team, and they definitely didn't want me in their battalion. But I was like, tough, I'm here.
Yeah. Tough. BigMan has showed up, and I'm going to show you what
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've really taken the adventure given to you. When you look back at the adventure that you had while you were serving, what kept you grounded? Faith, prayer, Bible, like what was your source of comfort and kept you grounded?
Oh, it's definitely my faith, because I'm not gonna lie, you get tested in so many ways, especially when you're a female in a male dominant MOS. They made me feel like I didn't belong there, that I wasn't enough to be a soldier or enough to be a mechanic, but they found out real quick, okay, maybe I'm not as fast as some of the guys when it comes to turning wrenches. But when they found out in the physical training, the PT, I ran 12s and 13s in my 2 mile, and I did 85 push-ups. So I outdid a lot of the guys in that aspect. So there was always that one, maybe I didn't get you in changing out an engine, but I outran you. But I have to honestly say it was my faith. God got me through a lot of this stuff, especially when I was in combat.
For sure, for sure. So as you were talking about that, it made me think of this next question. How do you feel? Because, they thought you weren't enough. You weren't enough because you were a woman. You weren't enough soldier, but you weren't enough to be a mechanic, but you proved you were, and you are a woman veteran. So how does it feel to be a woman veteran?
I guess it just feels, even though I'm not wearing the uniform anymore, and then my experiences and the mountains of obstacles, it makes me proud to even done, especially when I hear the national anthem. It makes me that much prouder, because the fact that, I had a part in that. Maybe not the original, but I still have a part in these freedoms. And it kind of angers me when people kind of take these freedoms for granted, but I'm going to still stand proud. I'm very proud. I'm proud to be a woman. I'm proud to be a veteran, especially a veteran, because it was a rough go. It wasn't easy. I've been told many times that I had one of my soldiers that gave me such a hard time, said that he didn't like taking orders from a woman. And then needless to say, he was an Army brat and his mother was a drill sergeant.
That's probably why he didn't like it.
Yeah, it cut my heart out when he said that. I had to step away and I had to go somewhere. And I'm one of those, I'm so sensitive. So I have to I'm going to be right back. And I have to go somewhere just to, because you can't lose your bearing in front of your soldiers. So I'm like, I'm going to be right back. And I go somewhere and I just let it all out. I'm like kicking the rocks. I'm like, Lord, why am I here? And why are you having me go through this? I can't seem to get any type of recognition or the fact that I work hard for my stripes. It's not given to me. And then it's even harder as a Native American. It seemed like I worked twice as hard, sometimes 3 times as hard, just to prove myself. And then after I calm down, then I go back and I'm like, okay, well, you might have a problem with women leading you or telling you what to do, but too bad. Guess what? I'm still going to tell you what to do.
Guess what? You are mine, soldier. That's so awesome. I think you have such a love for country and a love for your heritage that is more than likely why you started the organization that you have started. Do you mind talking a bit more about the Native American Women Warriors Foundation that you have started? So maybe you could tell us a bit more about what your organization does.
Well, again, I guess it's where trying to find that recognition. It was hard getting the recognition in the military, but when we came out, or those of us that are still serving for some reason amongst our own people, we weren't recognized. The men were recognized because, they're known for being the protectors. They're the ones that go to war, and then they fail to realize, no, we go to war too. We get shot at. I was in a rocket attack. Look at Lori Paestawa. She gave her all.
Yeah.
So why can't we be recognized? Why can't we don the war bonnets? Some of our male counterparts only served 1 term. Some of us actually did, serve past 20 years. Some of us did multiple deployments, and we faced those same fears when we're out there, not knowing. And then some of us had children, when we're known for the givers of life. So I'm like, some of us we went to war knowing that, hey, what if we don't make it back to our kids? What if we don't get to hold our kids again? So, it was just the fact that they didn't seem to realize that we weren't given that same gratitude. And then I was always one, oh, what about the female? Especially in the military, what about the women? What about, I've been ridiculed because of it, but I'm like, well, you can't shut me up. I'm sorry. What about the female? Because guess what? I'm in uniform just like you are. I'm out there just like you are. So when I was coming home and trying to, like, I'll attend a powwow or something, it seemed like, oh, our men, they go off to war, and I'm like, man, I went to war. I got shot at. So that's when I kind of pushed it. When I got out of the military, I kind of made that recognition again, that same spirit that I used in the military, I was using when I got out. So I took it a step further, and I was always known for putting patches on my Indian outfits, whether it was my combat patch, my combat action badge, my rank or something. And I was always, I love the style of jingle for what it stood for. So Ojibwe, it came from the Ojibwe, and it's a prayer dress and a dance of healing. So that's why I really chose that dress. So I took it a step further, and there was three of us ladies during Denver March. I made us 3 dresses, and the red, white, and blue, similar designs. I put our unit patches, our combat patches, the Army patch, and our ranks on there. And a lady by name of Camille Claremont noticed when we were getting ready for, I think it was the second grand entry. I remember 2010 on a Saturday, we were getting ready for the second grand entry because we wanted to show off our new jingle dresses and the fact that we're veterans, So she had asked us about it. And I told her, I said, well, we're veterans. So she goes, so you're a color guard? I'm like, no, we're not a color guard. We didn't have no flags, no nothing. We didn't know nothing about becoming a color guard. Mm-hmm. Even though a lot of the color guards, when we went to the powwows, it was always the men. I might have been able to hold the flag somewhere in the back with the male color guard, but not us women leading or anything like that. So she had left. And then we're getting ready for a grand entry. I said, well, we better get going. So we're all excited already to show off our new dresses. We were all Army. I was a regular Army. Tony Eagle Feathers was Army Reserve, and Cindy Little Feathers, she was Army National Guard. So we're getting ready to line up in grand entry, and here comes Chico Hermeni horses running across the arena. And I was like, where is he running to? Is he running towards us? But we're starting to walk over to stand in line to get ready to go for grand entry. And he had a tablet with him, and he came running over. He goes, and grand entry is getting ready to start. So he's telling me, I need your name, the nation you represent. you know, your branch of service. So I'm writing this stuff real quick, like, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. Because I was like, no, we got to get in line because we're about to get started. And then he goes, I need the name of your color guard. And I stopped. I said, my apologies, sir. There seems to be a misunderstanding. We're not a color guard. He goes, but your dresses. And I said, I just made us 3 dresses that look almost identical, but we're not a color guard. I said, we don't even have a name. I don't even know what to call us. But me, I'm always being a smart aleck. I said, I don't even know what to call us, but sexy vets, you know. And then he goes, what campaign? And I'm like, I know, Iraqi Freedom. All of us were involved in Iraqi Freedom. He goes, okay, we're going to call, and we were all Army at the time. Mm-hmm. So we were all Army affiliated. So he goes, okay, we're going to call you the Army Women's Iraqi Freedom Veterans. I'm like, okay, because we all looked at each other. I'm like, this ain't going nowhere, because we were already in that mindset. It's not going to go anywhere. As many times as we've tried to bring it forth, and sometimes we just take at such a huge power, we didn't think it was going to go anywhere. So it's like, okay. He goes, we're going to put you last. And I looked at the girls. I'm like, man, we just can't seem to catch a break.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that was the best place to put us. And we didn't realize it. Like I say, God always has a plan. Sometimes I wish he'd throw me a bone so I can kind of prepare for it. But, you know, sometimes you just got to go with what, you know, you got to trust God. So we were last. I think there was like 10 color guards in front. They even had the ROTC in front of us, but it's okay. But anyways, as they were naming the color guards after grand entry, and then they were telling, you know, how, you know, we want to thank our veterans, especially our men that, you know, fought for our freedoms. And we're just looking at each other like, oh boy, do we have to listen to this? So they were calling the color guards, and everybody's moving forward. And then, and we were last. We didn't have no flags. All we had was our hand fans. I felt so lost. But when it came to us, we stepped forward, and it was automatic. We stepped forward on our left foot. And everybody goes, oh, look at that. They're in sync. And we're like,
yeah.
I don't know. That's something we do in the military.
Uh-huh.
But I remember Lawrence Baker. He was the MC. And he was like, well, look at what we have here. This is the most prettiest color guard I've ever seen. So we're laughing, we're blushing, we're, you know, giggling. And he goes, one thing that we fail to realize is we have our women that fight for our freedoms as well. And he said, I've been an MC for 25 years, and I've always been given the honor of announcing some of the greatest people. So we're sitting there thinking, I'm like, where's he going with this? And he goes, but today I have the greatest honor of announcing our first all-female Native American color guard. I'm introducing to you the Army Women's Iraqi Freedom Veterans. Man, the drums were going, war cries, lulus, applause, whistles, and we're like, oh, we just froze. We never expected that kind of a welcome, I guess. Yeah, a recognition. We were getting, me being a big old sap as it was, trying to fight my tears. And I looked at the girls, I'm like, I'm ready to cry. And they're already crying.
Hey y'all, I just have to interrupt this conversation to give you a quick, exciting announcement for us over here at the Freedom Sisters Media. Y'all, our magazine launched today. The Freedom Sisters magazine is available on iOS and Android platforms, as well as a web-based interface. Guys, check it out. Go to www.freedomsisters.com/magazine and download the app today and enjoy the first issue. It is free on us to showcase all the amazing stories of service and success of women veterans. All right, go read it today and let us know what you think.
But like I said, and ever since that day, then we were invited to a lot of powwows. So I was like, okay, we got to get flags. And my cousin Julia Kelly, who retired as a command sergeant major, I had her join our organization. We were just the color guard. So prior to her retirement, she got us some flags, and so we were like authentic. Now we're And she was a drill sergeant, so she really made sure that we were in step, got everything together, and
Nice.
it kind of grew from there. So it was originally just a color guard, and then in 2012, we were always doing a lot of guest speaking. And one lady wanted to donate to. She goes, "I'd like to donate to your organization." I'm like, "Oh, no, we're not an organization. We're just a color guard. We do guest speaking sometime, our keynote speakers, but we can't take any money." She goes, "Have you ever thought of being a nonprofit?" I'm like, "Man, I don't know beans from a buckshot about being a nonprofit." But she goes, "We'll help you. We're Native Strategies. We help a lot of our natives start their own for-profit or nonprofit." She goes, "What you ladies do, I think you could be a great nonprofit." So I was like, "Oh, okay." And how we changed the name to Native American Women Warriors is, like I say, we had some Marine Corps young lady wanted to join us, Air Force, and a Navy. I had cousins that were Navy, and they said, "We want to join your organization, but yours is Army, the Army Women's Iraqi Freedom Veterans." And I told the lady, I said, "We need to change our name.
Yeah.
We have to be inclusive to all branches." So I think at the time, I think I was going through finishing my bachelor's or started my master's degree. And it was late one night and we were all on a conference call. And I said, "Okay, something that means warrior, because we're warriors, but we're women too. And then let's not forget we're indigenous." So they were coming up with all kinds of names. And I was so tired. And I was trying to write type my paper that was due. And then I was like, "I don't know, Native American Women Warriors." And they was like, "That's it." I was like, "Okay, Native American Women Warriors." So we all agreed on it. And then we just kind of went from there. And we changed when we started the 501c3, then that's when we used that name, Native American Women Warriors, and even paid for the trademark. I paid out of pocket for the trademark name, Native American Women Warriors.
Yeah.
And it's been rough because it's kind of hard. We're virtual. I mean, we got ladies all over the United States. I have some in Europe, some that are stationed in Korea, and trying to come together. We do a lot of Zoom meetings, Skype meetings, fundraising, and to be a regular nonprofit, it's really, really hard.
Yeah,
especially when you're
the weak at heart. That's for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that's really cool. You went from being the small three, which I also love that each component of the Army was represented in your initial three. I think that's flipping amazing, because like what are the chances of that? And I think that's beautiful. And then you touched on the jingle dress, and I love your jingle dress. When you put that on and just the sound of it, there's just this, I mean, it's regalia. There's just sound of royalty that comes from that, and a calming and a peace. There's just so much. And I did not know it was a healing dress, or prayer dress. These are things that I didn't know when I heard the sound of the jingle dress, but there was just something very serene about it. So can you tell us a bit more of the history of the jingle dress, perhaps?
Yes, I've heard various stories. Again, it's Ojibwe. And one of the stories I recall was a grandfather had a dream, because I think it was not the father. No, it was the father that had a dream about, because his daughter was very, very sick. And I think it was during that time when they had the bad pandemic flu amongst the natives at the Great Lakes area. And she was sick for a long time. And he had a dream that he's supposed to be 4 women in a certain type of dress. And they were supposed to dance a certain type of way. Like their footwork is supposed to be close to the earth, because you're still touching the earth, because it's Mother Earth. So in his dream, when he told his wife, they made those dresses with the cones, and then they made one for the daughter. First, the ladies were to dance, and then the daughter was to come out and dance with them. But she was so sick, it was just hard for her. But as time went on, the dance, and I tell a lot of people, all of our dances are some type of healing, but this particular one was through a dream, and it was meant for healing. It's a prayer dress and a dance of healing. So a lot of times when we've been asked to do the dance for people that were actually, one gentleman that was in the hospital, and they didn't think he was going to make it. So they asked us, would Native American Women Warriors mind doing the dance for us? So we had to do it all virtual through Zoom and send the videos off. And I think there was like 3 of us that danced, and we danced our heart out. And I said, I feel kind of weird because I can't do it there for him. But they said when he's seen the videos, I guess he cried, and they said that just kind of gave him that little more gumption, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going. So that's why we use it, because of that, the dream and what it stands for. And eventually the young girl, she kept doing it, and she was completely healed. And they've used that, again, it's from the Ojibwe. And I've been asked, why does Native American women warriors use this particular dress? And I said, because of what it stands for. It's a prayer dress and a dance of healing. And we as veterans, a lot of us have gone through a lot, whether combat or peacetime, especially with the women. There's a lot of things that we have to struggle over, but it's time for us to heal, not only as veterans, but as a nation. And a lot of the women that I come across that need help that deal with the MST, which is military sexual trauma. And I'm a survivor of that. So there's a lot of things that I try to get the resources out for our women that have had to face that.
For sure.
So, but that's why we use that jingle dress. And I tell people, I said, you get a lot of us dancers together that have the jingle dress dancers. Close your eyes. I said, it sounds like rain. And I said, rain is what purifies the earth and what nourishes the earth at the same time. That's why I use it.
Wow. I get choked up and emotional quite a bit more now that I'm a little older than I used to, but there's just like this amazing, I'm like almost, the tears are like welling up in my eyes, but there's a part of what you're saying about this healing piece. And I think it's so beautiful that you picked this dress, because you couldn't be more right in us women needing to heal from the broken parts of our stories, and especially with the traumas or with the struggles or the challenges that we had to overcome that our male counterparts can't relate to. Some of them they can, but there's a lot that's unique to us as women who served. And that's really one of the reasons why I started the podcast, was this healing opportunity to come share your stories in this safe space amongst sisters, right? And then impart that to the rest of the world so they can know us and they could realize the greatness that we have accomplished, and also accomplishing that greatness while suffering through some really ugly things at times. And I just think that it is so beautiful that you picked that dress, because you are most definitely right when you're talking about the healing part of our service. That's incredible. This whole thing is so incredible. I'm like trying not to get overly emotional, but you went from, 2010, this first back at the line, the very last, they saved the best for last, in my opinion, on that day. And nobody knew who you were. And then fast forward 3 years later, and you are marching in the presidential inaugurations. Can you talk about that moment and how that felt for your organization?
I think we had a lot of mixed emotions, and a lot of it was positive because we were excited. I was like, hey, we made sure, hey, this is for the president. We got to make sure we practiced and practiced and practiced. And how about some of those ladies we never met until that 2 days prior to the inauguration? And talk about having to make dresses, because I make the dresses.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many dresses I had to make. Oh, well, there are two of them. Two of the ladies said, well, I have my aunt that'll make my dress for me. Can you send us the design? So I did. I'm cutting out extra designs and sending out to two other ladies. So they had their families. There was two of the ladies that had their families make dresses. The rest of them I made. Wow. I think since Native American Woman Warriors had actually started in 2010, I went through 6 sewing machines.
Oh, wow.
Because I made the white dresses, the red, white, and blue, and then pink, the first dresses, then the red, then now the blue. And everybody loves the blue. And I was asked, why blue? I said, it stands for valor. I said, the red stands for the blood that was shed for our land. And then the white is for the purity. So I said, that's why I had these dresses. First, it was the white, and then me, Tony, and Cindy, that's when we designed the red. And then I took that and made it a little bit, that's when I went with the blue dresses for the valor. And not only that, because we're in the presidential inauguration. And I was like, we were excited. Like I said, we practiced, I think, for like hours. It was cold too, but we were out there practicing in the parking lot, and people are staring at us like, what are these women doing? We ain't care. I was like, you'll see tomorrow on TV. And my daughter, Tia, she came with us because she in turn started one for the youth along with Native American women warriors. Hers was more like for the youth auxiliary, because she said, you know what, Mom, a lot of times I know how you feel, because they forget about the children of the veterans, that they have to watch their mother and father leave for war, not knowing if they're ever going to come back. Just like Lori Payesa's children.
Right.
You know, they didn't want her to go. And then she didn't come back. She came back, but not the way that she left.
Yeah, not the way.
So Tia, she marched with us, but she wore on the back of her dress a different patch where, you know, she's in support of all of the military, because we call them military brats. But she started that portion. She kind of carried off our organization and started the youth auxiliary. So now we have like all these young ladies that actually color guard with us. It's like our own ROTC type of group. Because a lot of times when some of our ladies that couldn't color guard at some of the events, she goes, okay, why can't we do it? So my daughters have color guarded with us, and we've had some other girls that are coming on board. So I'm going to be making dresses for the rest of my life. But you know what?
But you're so talented, man. I can't wait to share. Hopefully there's some video or something out there that I could share with our audience, because your dresses are gorgeous. I did not realize you made them all. So hello, diesel mechanic to beauty dress. Like, you are amazing. Like, there's nothing that women can't do, and prove that.
Yeah,
and you like encompass that all in one person. So
yeah. And a lot of people said, well, who taught you how to sew? I was like, no one. I had to figure this out on my own. And I said, I sewed over my finger a couple times. My kids will tell you, I've cut myself. So I tell these ladies, I said, these dresses that I make you, I actually give blood. Either I stuck myself with a stick pin, or, you know, cut myself. And I'm like, especially with the cones, when I'm putting them on, I used to roll the cones myself. So I had a lot of cuts and all over my hands. I'm surprised I still have fingerprints left, but I guess I was just determined. And when I see the ladies wear them, I'm just like, you know, I'm like, wow, I'm full. I mean, there's a happiness when they don their dresses and they're out there color guarding, even the little girls, even the young girls. And I can send you some pictures of one powwow where I had to rely on just the girls alone, because the ladies that were going to come weren't able to make it. One, she got out, but she was a police officer and she got called into work. And the other one, she had a sick little girl. So I was like, oh my gosh. And Tia goes, yeah, but you have us. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So they have their dresses. Theirs is mostly the red. I kind of gave them the red dresses, but they also like the blues. So I'm like, okay, well, you can do the blue or the red. So I have some pictures with them, and where they've actually color guarded along with me. And I've been asked, you know, they look really young for veterans. I said, no, they're kind of like our youth auxiliary, like our ROTC unit. That's the only thing I could think of. I said, we're not actually ROTC, but that's what they are. And they've been interviewed several times, and they're like, well, you know, we're proud of our parents. You know, we have to see them go off to war, not knowing they're going to come back. And I had adopted four children. They're all siblings. They're from my first cousin, and the two girls are the ones that really color guard with us, and they're understanding the military life. Even though I'm retired, they're like, man, you still in the military, Mom.
Another one of my guests has said she's retired but not removed, and I think that is probably sums up your life too. As you're talking about all these young women, you know, your ROTC quote unquote group, is there any advice that you would give specifically to a younger Native American woman who would want to serve in the military?
Oh, one thing is, don't forget who you are and where you came from, and be proud of who you are. And yes, there's going to be obstacles, but there's a lot of veterans that came that paved that way for you. So stand proud. And if you ever need someone to lean on, say, hey, Native American Women Warriors, we're all over the place. We're just, Facebook page, a phone call away. We're here. We're here to support you. And you'll find out that a lot of the sister veterans are there for you, even in basic training. That's one thing I found out, camaraderie. We were strong in basic training. And then kind of, some might have forgot it along the way, but no, when it came down to it, we all come together as veterans, especially women, and we got each other's back because we understand. Nothing against the males, but for some reason they're more passive and we're more emotionally strong.
Mhm. That's good. That's good. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share? You have a active listening audience before we wrap this up.
Well, just thank you for this great opportunity. I mean, I was sorry I missed the other times because I had a family member and another veteran I was taking care of. My brother, he's a combat veteran. He had a little something that he was going through, but like I say, it's just never forget your family, love yourself, and you're a success. Even it doesn't matter if it's one step at a time, you can do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's always God's timing. It always works out the way that it's supposed to. And so no worries, like we're talking on the day that we're supposed to be talking. And so that's just beautiful. So I have 3 final questions I ask all my guests. And I'm not sure if you're a podcast listener or not, but do you have a podcast recommendation that you could share?
I don't have a podcast, but my son, he does. Matter of fact, he interviewed me, and I think I was more nervous with him than anything. His is MC Native,
Oh, good.
and he does a lot of research. He interviews a lot of the Native young artists, veterans. He's one that's really deeply into the culture of all indigenous nations. So he's very supportive of all veterans. He's proud to be a child of veterans because both me and his father were in the military. So his name is Marcus Cyrus. His father, the very person that said that he didn't want to listen to any women telling him what to do, is the one I married. We've been together for oh my goodness. I think Marcus will be 30. I can't believe it. I'm like, sigh. How did we manage to get through here? But yes, he's proud to be Native,
Awesome.
and he really reaches out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out his podcast. That sounds like to diversify my listening. I think I really want to go check him out. How do you? So the next question is, how do you nurture your faith?
I guess it's, well, no, not I guess. I would keep saying that. It's something I do first thing in the morning. And that's one thing I was also taught. Some of my cousins taught me. As soon as they got up in the morning, they went out and they would have a smudge stick, which was sage, and they would burn it. And then they would hit all 4 directions and they would pray. Because natives are spiritual people. Mm-hmm. And how we still use that, to cleanse the house, to keep our spirit strong. And I guess I kind of coincide that with my faith with God, because I was like, as soon as I get up in the morning, I might have aches and pains and things pop and click. But I said, Lord, I thank you because your grace is still on this earth. I thank you for getting me up in the morning. I thank you for providing so much. And all the times they say never look back, but I look back at all the mountains that I had to climb, and I'm on a better one. There was those valleys, but Lord, you got me through it. And that's what I do. And sometimes I'm in a rush. I'm running down the stairs. Sometimes I'm like, Lord, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful day. The fact that you still love me with all my problems and all my mistakes, you love me. Yes. And that's what I try to share with other people, more like witness. And I'm like, you got to give him a chance. He can do so much for you, because this woman made so many mistakes and stumbled so many times, but he got me through it all.
Amen to that, sister. Holy smokes. Yes, 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 and yes. So what about a lasting impact that your personal service has had on your life?
It made me a better person. It made me not to be so scared of stepping outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
It made during the military, like I say, it made my faith stronger in God, because especially when I was at war and I was in a rocket attack, I'm like, Lord, I'm not ready to go yet. I still have my kids. I still have my family. I still have my children. And he got me through it. But I think through that whole time in the military, I have to give my glory and honor to God, because he's the one that got me through those 22 years.
That's awesome. And now look at the impact and the lasting legacy that you are establishing because of his goodness, and you're outwardly focused on your heritage and women veterans like Mitch. It's such a beautiful thing to see, and I am just so thankful to know you, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to sit down with you today. Like, your unselfish and faithful and devoted service comes through everything that you do. There's definitely a lasting contribution because of your service and what you're doing for Native American women that is impacting our nation in a really great way. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. Again, this was such an honor. One day I'm a hugger. So when we see each other, no COVID or anything, God's going to clear that out. We're going to hug.
Sounds great. I can't wait to hug.
If you enjoyed this show, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Rate and review this podcast and share with your friends. Until next time, be seen, be heard, be known. Amplify women veterans.